All right.
We got this. We got this.
What's up?
What's up?
I was looking and I just jumped the finger, man. I jumped the finger. I didn't jump the gun. I jumped the finger. What's up? Good morning, guys. Can you imagine, like when you listen, you have to cut that out as obviously on the part that goes on to the actual podcast so they can't see. That would just be, that would scare somebody. They're driving down the road.
What I normally do when I put it up on YouTube, because if you guys don't notice, I mean, things happen when you're live that you're not prepared for. We can fix that later. We can put it on YouTube, and then people that find us on YouTube don't have to know about it. But I always start as soon as I send the mics live. Anything before that gets cut off. So it's a good starting place in it because I can see that little
But when you pointed it, I'd already said, hey, good morning. Hey. That was the first thing.
I'll find a good spot for you. Don't worry.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man.
No problem.
Well, good morning, everyone. So we're going to talk about unfair advantage today.
Six.
It's brand new YouVersion Bible devotions dropping today. It'll be live any moment. I'll get the email any second. And from YouVersion, maybe even while we're on this podcast, wouldn't that be kind of cool? And you can go on. So if you're on YouVersion Bible app, or you can go to Bible.com. It's a pretty cool domain, right? I mean, Jesus bought that right when the internet, was coming out. So he got the dibs on that. Can you imagine if Jesus would have to buy that domain from someone today? I mean, that would be a lot of money. And no, so seriously, go to Bible.com, or you can download the YouVersion Bible app, and you can actually search all of our plans on there. You can just search David Villa. I think we have 22, 23, 25 plans, and we have close to 1 million subscribers internationally. We've got 6 or 7 plans that have, maybe even more, that are translated into Spanish as well. And we'd like some help. If you would like to help us translate a couple plans, reach out to us if that's your gig. And that'd be awesome to see your work on YouVersion, touching another language, another country. All right, so we're going to talk about unfair advantage, guys. And what I think everybody gets the gist of what it is. As a believer, God doesn't play favorites. The Bible says clearly in the Word that He's no respecter of persons, meaning that and what that means really is that, hey, everyone can be saved. Everyone qualifies with the blood of Jesus. You say yes to God. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter your past. It doesn't matter what side of the track you were born on. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter the number that's in your bank account. It doesn't matter your ethnicity. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter your gender. If you say yes to Jesus, then you're His and you're qualified. That's what's so cool. And the Bible talks about where God calls you, He qualifies you. He doesn't, He shows us time and time again by us, by calling me. He doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And so what unfair advantage is just that. But we're also going to kind of dive into it a little bit in the devotion. It's 4 days, but we're going to do it here in a couple of days. But the devotion itself dives into, you and I and individuals pointing out, that if you've had it rough, you've had a rough go at it, and and you've had some failures, and so we're going to how to really, I guess, turn those around, right? The unfairness in your life today will become the advantage tomorrow. And how does that even work? Only in the kingdom. If you think about the kingdom, it's like it turns like the common sense of what the world would call common sense on his ear. Like, hey, by the way, here's 100% of your money. Hey, listen, kingdom says you give God 10% of that. You're gonna have more in that 90%. You go, wait a minute, how can I have more in 90 than I do in 100? Mm-hmm. Because 90 with God is better than 100 without. It's kingdom principles. It doesn't make any sense. Like, you're not going to sit down with an economist that's not a believer and he's going to go, oh, that makes sense. How in the world can something that's unfair to me today become an advantage to me tomorrow? Well, that's kingdom, right? I mean, an unfair advantage is when you have favor on your life and somebody, else that doesn't know Jesus doesn't have favor. I mean, there's just a lot to it, right? I mean, a kingdom business is, everybody else does it one way. Everybody does it one way. And then you can get some ideas and some wisdom from folks that know how to do business. But when you're connected with the Lord and God blesses your business and speaks to you and tells you to do something maybe that's unorthodox, or maybe tells you to invest somewhere or hire somebody or start a product now or hold off until this time. So something that possibly wouldn't make sense in the world system, then all of a sudden your business flourishes because you are obedient to God. It's an unfair advantage. And if somebody tries to figure out in the world's way what happened, they can't do it. You can only understand it with the unfair advantage. You can only describe it that way. Mm-hmm. And I know somebody would say, it's not fair. And I'll say, you're right. It's not. But here's the deal. Everyone's invited to the party. He's no respecter of persons. So an unfair advantage involves everybody. You can all have one. You can all have it.
Well, I think what's cool, what you said a minute ago is you said you could be 90 and God will fill the 10, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The cool thing too is though, you could also be 2 and God will fill the 98.
Come on.
You know? And I think that's what's so awesome about the Lord is that no matter where you're at, he's going to fill the gap for you to put you right up there with everybody else. And that's where it talks about we're in this unfair advantage, because with the Lord, I mean, he levels the playing field for you, but not only levels the playing field for you, but allows you to conquer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, okay, I'm just thinking of this when you were saying that, like, you know, you have, how many kids you have?
5.
5 kids.
Last
okay.
time I checked.
So last time you checked. Okay, so all your kids, if they were, you know, you ever had your kids go, I don't know if your kids, my kids have done this, and they kind of joke now about it. They argue, and they're like, oh, no, he is, she is. Your kids ever say, like, hey, who's your favorite? They ever ask you that? Like, my kids have asked me that. Like, I'm like, I don't have a favorite. I love all of you guys. And also sometimes don't like any of you. You know what I mean? Like, it's equal. But the bottom line is they're like, no, Austin's your favorite. No, Ashton's your favorite. No, Alexa's your favorite. And they say that, and they base it on, well, he gets away with anything you want. So, you know, you just treat him differently. But here's the deal. We all have had that question asked. But obviously, we as parents, if you're a parent, you know that you love all your kids equally, yet, you know, they're different and individual. But can you imagine? Like, you can't pull for one of your kids over the other. Can you imagine if God's no respecter of person, and everyone that comes to him has an unfair advantage? Who's he rooting for? Think about that for a second, right? That'd be hard at the football game, right? God's like, go Sam, get Mike. No, I'm sorry. No, Mike. You know, he cares about everyone, and we all have an unfair advantage, but it's not against one another, right? It's not against one another. It's for God's purpose in your life. That'll preach right there. You need to find a way to type that in. So your unfair advantage, all his kids have an unfair advantage, but it's not for the purpose of against one another. It's so that you can accomplish God's purpose for your life. Come on, man. I don't know. I'm just like preaching. I think I'm going to do automatically. I'm not thinking, only because I've got a lot of things that are coming out of me that didn't make the cut for the first one. I'm going to do an unfair advantage part 2 Bible plan that I'm going to start writing today, and we're going to release it, because I think that a lot of the things we're saying today need to go into that plan as well. Not that some aren't in it, but some that were, because the more I'm thinking about it, you know, man, it's a cool concept.
The other thing that I was thinking as you were talking about, you know, in a game, you know, God's like rooting for both. The thing that's cool, and it goes much deeper than the surface that we're talking about right now, is in that same example, Sam may win the game, but Mike might still get the scholarship that he needed, you know. He might still get the experience that was needed to conquer the next task, the next game. But God's all-knowing, and so he's still rooting for both of you. And sometimes we're like, well, it seems like Sam has the advantage. He's the one that won the game. But God's like, no, I promise you, you're taken care of, Mike. Watch. I think that's cool too.
So we actually don't like this necessarily in real life. I know how some of you guys believe that everyone doesn't get a ribbon, but in God's kids, they all win. Like, right? I mean, it is really an unfair advantage because they all win. But what does winning look like to you versus what does it look like to Mike? Yeah. So you can win in the same game that Mike wins because there's enough of God to go around. Come on, man. See, we got to understand something here. You got to, if you're listening to this morning, you can't take this and shove it into your human box. You can't take this and go, okay, I'm gonna put this into the confines of my mind and my thinking. You just can't do it because it's an unfair advantage and it's God's game. Does that make sense? It's an unfair advantage, and it's God's game, meaning that, it's if Mike can win in the same game that Walter, it's like only God can do that. Only God can have a game that's so complicated, but yet so simple that includes everyone. And then we're not running into one another, but we're working alongside of one another, and we're all winning according to the purpose that God's called us for. That's God, man. That you can't even hold a candle to that. There is no game. I was watching Friends. I like watching Friends. Friends is like comfort food to me. I watch it like nonstop, when I'm just by myself or whatever. And my family likes it. My kids love it. But, they had this goofy game on there, that they were teaching in if you're not a Friends follower, you won't get this, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But, I was watching it, and it's like they invented this game, and they were, Joey and Chandler and Ross, they were playing it. And then at the end, it was just a really crazy game that was complicated. But it was really fast paced. At the end, Chandler was like, this is the most amazing game ever invented, and it was, in the beginning, it was complicated. And matter of fact, when Joey goes to audition for the host of it, the producer goes, "Oh no, we've canceled all of this stuff because the survey said it was too complicated." And he's like, "Oh my God, that was the best part of the game." And he's, whatever. The point is that God's game is complicated, but it's so simple, and it involves everyone. We're all players.
It's good.
I don't know, man. I'm just preaching. I'm feeling it this morning.
Go ahead, man.
I can't even look at my notes. I can't even look at them. What do you think, Mike? Unfair advantage. Unfair advantage.
The first thing when you said this morning that we were going to be talking about it, it just kind of made me think. It made me think about, a lot of times you'll hear anybody in, the Christian world say, when you have God in you, people will notice something different about you. When you're walking God's path, somebody will notice something different about you. And that's kind of what I see as the unfair advantage. Like we have this overwhelming sense of security that kind of, covers us in what we're doing, which takes away some of the anxiety and the worries that we have. And we're able to kind of be, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but we're more, we almost seem more carefree. Mm-hmm. When I walk into the gym in the mornings, most of the time before I ever start working out, I'm listening to worship music. And the guy at the front literally this morning stopped me and he goes, "Yo, why are you always so upbeat in the morning? Like you're not like the other people that like everybody walks in like dragging a little bit and it takes them a few minutes." I'm like, I have worship music running in my ears. It gets me warmed up in the morning. Like that's what starts my day. And that to me is what I kind of see by the unfair advantage is we have that security blanket over us. So it gives us that peace as we walk throughout the day.
Yeah. What if you didn't have? So keep in mind, just be prepared. We're going to have Brett, our content writer here. We're going to have him listen to the show. That's the task today and tomorrow. And he is going to write everything down that we are talking about. And we're going to make that the Bible plan part 2. You guys okay with that?
Yeah, it's good.
So imagine, so this is off the cuff. I'm not even looking at barely any of my notes here. So check out this Bible plan. It's awesome, but you're getting part 2 live.
They're getting part 2 before part 1.
You're getting part 2 live. You know what? I was reading this morning on some stuff about worship. And it's funny, I went and I played my worship music this morning as I was getting ready. And, it didn't hit me like that. But now taking my situation and linking it with what you just said, imagine that's an unfair advantage. Somebody goes, "Well, what are you talking about? Everyone has Spotify. Everyone has Apple Music. Yeah. They can download. They can listen to the same music. You can send them the playlist." Mm-hmm. Yes. But the unfair advantage is if I get up and I know Jesus, I don't always do it. I don't always take advantage of the unfair advantage.
Correct.
Ooh, somebody needs it. I don't need to take advantage of I don't always take advantage of the unfair advantage. However, I have the right to worship and let that start my day. If you're a non-believer and you don't have the unfair advantage, you get up and you worry. You get up and you worry. You get up and you fret. You get up and I'm thinking when you were saying that, the 7 dwarfs, ho, 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 it's off to work we go. Yeah. It's like they're just carrying little pitchforks and it's like, they're chanting, but man, they, it's like, I got to go do this. The unfair advantage is different.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. That's just that when you said that this morning, it immediately popped into my head because that, like I said, trust me, I only slept like 4 hours last night. So I woke up this morning like I really should go back to sleep for another hour and a half. So when I woke up, it was like, this is not going to be, one of those days. But and it, like you said, you choose to use that unfair advantage. You can wake up every single morning and choose not to use it. You can wake up every single day. It's on your side. It's there for you, and you can choose not to use it. And that's the difference. To me, that's the difference maker. Like, I wake up every morning regardless. When I wake up, I have to make that decision that I'm going to take that advantage for me that day.
That's good stuff, man. I was reading something in notes here, going into the one that's going to be available to you today on YouVersion. So think about this. So we have things we have to do, tasks we have to do today, tasks we have to do tomorrow, things that are on our to-do list. The unfair advantage, and this is again figuratively, is if you walked into work and they were cut in half, like everything that you had to do was cut in half, meaning that's a similar concept to the unfair advantage, because if you're plugged into Jesus, he this is not a Sunday God. This is not a Wednesday God. This is not a small group God. This is a God that follows you and comes with you to work. So the unfair advantage is I've got this task to do. It's like you ever like tried to get had to do something that was not fun to do, move, pack, yard work, things that you ever try to get someone to do it with you, and they didn't want to do it because it sucked, right? Imagine, you having to come to work and having to live your life and do tasks and handle things by yourself. No one's going to do it with you, but you got a God that links himself with you and gives you an unfair advantage. That's so powerful. Mm-hmm. Like not only is someone helping you, the master of the universe is helping you.
Well, I was listening to Reckless Love this morning on the way in. Ooh. And whenever Corey gets into this break and he starts to kind of explain the meaning behind the song, he talks about reckless. He's like, it's not careless. It's just that Jesus is utterly unconcerned with like putting basically his love in a box. And then he also talks about how, God bankrupted heaven for us to save us. And you think about bankrupting, you're bankrupting a limitless like account almost. It's an unlimited account that he bankrupted for us. That is the unfair advantage that, we hear all the time. Someone's successful and they're like, oh, they got a loan from their dad, for $1 million. Of course they're doing well. I'm not like that. We have limited resources at our disposal, and too many times we're like, well, I just don't have enough, but we do. We don't go to the bank that lets us, withdraw from him all the time. When I was listening to that today, I was like, man, bankrupted heaven. That is like unreal to me to think about that. It was just,
and what's crazy. Somebody goes, well, wait a minute, man, that's not biblical because heaven's not bankrupt. You got to get what he's saying, right? I mean, he's not talking about money. The Bible says that your God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. That, in other words, there's resources in heaven financially. That's not what God's talking about. Listen, he doesn't care about this earthly money. All of the wealth is his. He bankrupted heaven because it was the most and only the most valuable thing in heaven left to come to earth. So, I mean, without Jesus, right? Without Jesus, there is no heaven, right? I mean, without Jesus, God is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit here. Without Jesus, there is no heaven. So he did bankrupt heaven in a sense. I mean, what a great lyric. But we don't take advantage of it. Somebody would say, well, yeah, about the whole loan thing, and not literally speaking, but figuratively. Well, but then it goes back to we don't take advantage of the unfair advantage. We don't take advantage of the unfair advantage. And you go, well, and God's no respecter of person. He gave Mike, he blessed him this way. Well, remember, if you're playing a game, your win may not look like Mike's.
Correct.
And your loss may not, his win may not look like yours. It doesn't have to. It's not the way God, it doesn't mean it doesn't mean he's unfair. You get an unfair advantage. God's fair. He's a God who's just. Right? He's just.
Yeah. Losses can sting. You can have a loss. We keep talking about like we're all in the same game, and you can have a loss and it can sting, but it's still a win because you learned something from it. You gained something from that. So that's what you always have to keep in the back of your mind. Like Walter may get a raise before me. That's not a loss for me. That's okay. What can I do to step up my game? Mm. And I think that's when we talk about this, it's important to keep in the back of your minds. Like, just because you have the unfair advantage, you may still have a loss. You may not get exactly what you want, which we've talked about literally for the past, week, from procrastination to doing things. we may not get what we want in our time, but God's got a plan for it. And that's where you have to understand and recognize, yeah, I may not have got what I wanted, but this isn't a loss. I still gained something from this. It's still a win.
You're never in a disadvantage when God's on your side. And most of the time, I doubt and I question, but I have to remind myself that I'm never in a disadvantage because, I believe in God and I have faith. And it's something that I've been telling myself a lot lately.
When I'll use my Karate Kid analogy again. Okay. So think about this. When he's painting the fence and when he's sanding the dock and stuff, he gets to a point he's like, I am beat. Like, this was pointless. You just used me up. I'm exhausted. And then Mr. Miyagi takes a swing at him, and all of a sudden he's using the methods and he's like, what in the world? I think God does that to us all the time. We're like, man, you've just broken me. And then he's like, all right, now watch this. And then you're like, paint the fence. You're like, oh my gosh, God was doing something the whole time.
That scene from Empire Strikes Back where Luke is trying to raise the ship up and Yoda comes and he does it for him. It was like, I can't believe it. How did you do that? And he was like, that's why you fail.
Hey, look at the nerd and Sam just came out. Right there. You're a Star Wars guy?
Of course, man.
Who would have thought? Everything else we ask, if you like, you don't. So, going back to what you just said, say that last part, that last line, because before he brought the Star Wars line in, what was the last line?
I just said, you're thinking like, man, I was beat,
right?
But the whole time I was like, oh, this is what it was for,
So somebody out there is called, right, to greatness, and you want to be an entrepreneur. You want to be, I got this business idea. I want to be a CEO. I want to, all of these things, right? And then all of a sudden you go to a mentor and sit down, and then they have you, like in a ministry, maybe cleaning the bathrooms, and you're like, I'm called to the masses. You know what I mean? I remember a mentor of mine, he's in heaven now, said that, he had all these giftings and talents, and he went to this ministry. He was brought in. He was a young guy at this time, came in, and it was just going to be, I'm just going to conquer the world here in this ministry. And he went into this ministry, and the first thing the pastor did is brought him on as the janitor. And here he is cleaning bathrooms. And he said God taught him so much in this 6-7 months of doing this, where he was frustrated at first. He was like, this is not what I went to Bible school for. This is not what I came here to this ministry. And, I'm gifted and I'm talented. And here I am cleaning toilets. And he was looking at people around him, and he started, you know what you start to do? You start to look at your brothers, your sisters around you, God's children, and you start to go, okay, that's not fair. I'm better than that person. I can do more than that person. And you start to kind of take shots. And then, and you're taking shots at God's kids, at your brothers and sisters. But the reality is, what's God teaching you? And
nothing's wasted.
Nothing's wasted, man. And that's an unfair advantage, because I'm going to tell you, I didn't know him during that time, but I knew him later on. And I can tell you that the 4 or 5 years I was around him, I heard that story referred to, or that season in his life referred to, at least 20 times. And I heard him bring out gold nuggets from that. So guess what? There was a it stunk going through that, literally and figuratively, cleaning toilets. But God was doing something.
And that goes back to the process too, what we've talked about. But we've also talked about, God's not going to give you more until you prove that you can be responsible with what he's giving you now. So in that situation, and what I can see in that process is, all right, you want to lead this church, you're gonna have to start here. Start showing that you can be responsible for this. Then I'll start to give you more. And that's the beauty in the process, is you learn so much more from that. You pick up everything. And that, to me, it also, I'm not trying to go off topic, but that also is leadership, because then as a leader, I firmly believe in leading by example. So you're not above, hey, everybody's out this week sick, I got to go make sure that the church is clean before Sunday service. You have that already in the back. You already have that experience, and you know that you can go do it. Not saying that people don't know how to clean a toilet, but,
At some places you would wonder if they have anybody that knows how. They're so good, guys. When you think of it, we use the word, and we use that word so much. That's not fair. We don't say unfair, really. We say that's not fair, And we've said that. And you know what's crazy? How many times have you not said it with your lips? Thousands more times has it never left your lips, but it's been in your mind and you've had a pity party all by yourself. You've said, that's not fair. That's not fair. That's just not fair.
It especially stings when you know that you're doing the Lord's work, and you know that like you're doing good, and you start to like calculate what you feel like is a cost. You're like, man, I feel like I've put in more than Sam. You know, I feel like I've been putting way more in than Sam. Why is he, you know, being blessed in this moment? But then again, it comes back to the point where when I do see that blessing, you know, and I'll use example. I've talked about this before, but my wife and I, when we struggled through infertility, seeing like even, you know, teenagers in school, you know, getting pregnant, there was this like, God, I'm pastoring at a church right now. And you're not blessing me with this. What in the world? I mean, it's just so bitter. But now I look at it, I got 5 wonderful, beautiful children. And it's like, God blessed me over and over, you know, and over and over. But just in ways that I would have never thought. And I'm so thankful that like even me being bitter in that moment, God was like, I'm still blessing you. I'm still going to bless you. Just wait. It's just cool how he works.
Something else we talked about recently is, you don't know what that blessing means to somebody else in their life and why they needed it at that moment.
Yeah.
It's true.
I'm gonna read this. Maybe this gives you guys a couple minutes to maybe comment on this. This is day 2, so we can just get on the plan for a second here as we get ready to wrap up day 1 of the podcast. We'll do this again tomorrow. We'll just talk a little bit more about this. The plan will be live here in a little bit, but you know, the phrase is in the day 2. Life isn't fair. You know, we say that's not fair. Right, that's more of a statement about a day, about a situation. But the reality is, you link enough of those "that's not fair" together, then you say life isn't fair. You know, and for years I didn't like that phrase. I still don't like it for the same reasons, but I see it differently in some way, because I thought it was a phrase that was said by pessimists, right? And you know, using excuses for something they'd done wrong, what have you. Yet, you know, when I think of the 3-word phrase now, today, I see truth in it. So life isn't fair, right? The Bible actually says it rains on the just and the unjust. So life is never supposed to be fair, right? It's not. I mean, it rains on the just and the unjust. And so here's the difference. What's the difference between the just and the unjust? The unfair advantage, you know, and that is also, on the flip side, not fair. It's unfair. But it's an advantage, right? So life isn't fair. So bad things happen to good people, things that they didn't ask for, things you didn't deserve, things that you didn't bank on. So here's the thing. So life doesn't concern itself with good, bad, right, and wrong, and what the outcome is. Humans do. So here's the deal. We see success happening all around us, but not within us. And we say that isn't fair. We blame our circumstances. We blame where we were born. We blame the lack of opportunities. We blame our boss. We blame our job. We blame whatever, our ex-wife, our ex-husband. We blame anyone and everyone on our issues. Here's the reality. Regardless of your background, regardless of your circumstances, regardless of who you are, life will put you to the test. So here's the thing I'm going to read. I'm going to get you guys to comment on this in the last couple minutes. But instead of comparing your setbacks to the setbacks of others, we have to focus on us, right? Because when we stand before God, we're responsible for us. So that means we're responsible for us now. So we have to figure out how we can reach our goals despite our setbacks. Comparison does no good, right? It just does no good. And so I think that's probably where it's at, right? Our setbacks are hangups. Our setbacks become hangups to us, right? And we get hung up on them long after they're no longer a setback. Think about that. Your setbacks become hang-ups because you're hung up on them. So you say our setbacks become hang-ups. That's all you got to say. So, but we get hung up on them long after they stop being a setback. Mm-hmm. You're no longer who you were when you were growing up at the disadvantage. But if you allow that, I have for years, my dad leaving my mom and, you know, us at 4 years old, I know for a great period of my adulthood, okay, I came to realize through counseling in my adulthood, in my marriage, in my life, as a father, as a business owner, as a minister, held me back. It was a hang up because I was hung up on a setback that no longer was a setback.
That's good.
I don't know. What do you think? I don't know.
You mentioned comparisons. I'll just make a quick one. Like if I go to the gym every morning and compare myself to the guy that's been going to the gym for 2 years, I'm always going to be let down. You can't compare to what other people are doing. Like your advantage is your advantage.
Oh no, just stop.
Come on, Ez, drop it. Drop it. I've been waiting.
Nah, come on, man. It ain't that serious. It's just like that's the thing too. Is like I'm not a super like deep and like I don't really look into a whole lot of like motivation stuff a whole lot and like whatever. But like I do my best every day just to try to be like a positive mindset for myself. I mean others too, but like realistically, like I'm always looking out for me. Like that's what it comes down to. It's me. Every morning I wake up, I'm the one that's there. Every morning every night I go to sleep, I'm the one that's there. So like. I don't know, like, I just stopped worrying about what other people are doing, man. Like, just do your own thing. Like, if you see somebody succeeding, support them, be happy for them. But, like, there's no reason for you to think that somebody has an unfair advantage over you. You've got an unfair advantage over them. You're just not using it because you're so focused on theirs, man. Like, just focus on yours. Do your thing because you're the one that's making it unfair for yourself because you're not focusing on, okay, what can I do to reach that point to? What can I do to better improve myself? What can I do? What's God given me that I'm not paying attention to? It's just you're so focused on everybody else's that you're creating an unfair advantage because you're holding yourself back, man. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think a lot of times we get so caught up in like what other people are doing that like we don't realize that we're the ones that are causing the problem instead of somebody else.
Boom. Hey, real quick, can you get a close up of that, Ez?
Sure.
Can anybody get a close up of that? YouVersion just went live. I just got the email here. So we're going to hold it up here just until the guys can get it. Sorry, put them on the spot, but just wanted to show you guys right here.
A little bright, but...
Little bright. Let's see if we can get a close up on it. There you go. Can you see it? YouVersion.
There you go.
Congratulations. It went live. So it's live right now. It's called Unfair Advantage. And I hope you enjoy it. And we'll be back tomorrow to talk about part 2 of Unfair Advantage. Boom, boom.
Awesome.
Song of the day is Nothing Is Wasted from Elevation. You and Walter actually said it back to back like 10 minutes ago, and it clicked in my mind. I'm like, oh, it's a really good song.
I said, oh, yeah. I love it.
And on that note,
Whoa, wait.
We out.